I just thought the funniest element of the whole coverage and the freakout of this balloon is just that the whole reasoning for like why is it over Montana, and like just dismissing the idea that perhaps that was because of just natural weather patterns. But it's like, oh, there's these US military bases that have ICBMs in Montana. You see, they're spying on the military bases. And then they would show on every news program that was showing this, they'd be like, look, as you can see from this map of Montana that we're showing right now, you've got military bases here, and here's where the ICBMs are. And it's like, so what's the problem here exactly? Like, you're literally on TV telling everybody you can find out where these nuclear weapons are stored very easily. Like, Jordan, you sent me today a picture of Montana from the sky. It just looks like anything. Like, there's nothing interesting or valuable there from this information. The Chinese have lots of satellites. If they want to take pictures of Montana, they can do that literally at any time. So just the whole framework of like why this freakout was about just seemed like it was completely flawed in the first place, and was more about this kind of theatrical bullshit than it is about any actual legitimate security concerns that people have.
The meltdown over China using this to map the U.S. like cracked me up. Like they couldn't do that already.
They didn't know what it looked like. They didn't know.
Like they can get a Google Street View of your house right now if they wanted. Like, this is of no real gain to them. And yeah, mapping the US, if you look at the flight pattern, it flew over some of the least populous states in the country. That was the picture. I just googled US farmland and sent it to you, Rob. Like, this is what they got from us. Like, they know where your corn crops are now.
Yeah. Oh no. But to your point, Jules, like a lot of the things that people are worried about, like whether it comes to this balloon or whether it comes to TikTok, we can do your segue now that I interrupted it.
Wonderful transition.
Or when it comes to TikTok, we're already voluntarily giving up all this information, like not just to China, but to any of these major tech companies, to our own governments, which, as you acknowledge, are spying on us, which we've have extensive evidence of. So it seems kind of weird and a little bit xenophobic and paranoid to complain about the very specific possibility of China getting access to this kind of information, while just being totally okay with a lot of the time that all that same information just being out there for whatever big tech company or whatever ad agency or whatever is going to have that. I mean, it just seems weird to freak out about specifically China sending balloons and programming apps to get all your stuff when all this stuff is already out there about every one of us.
I mean, yeah, that's 100%. It kind of makes me wonder, does the average person understand the degree to which they're most likely being surveilled, or like how much of their information isn't private or isn't? Like we didn't, or actually we wrote an episode a couple of months ago for Good Morning Bad News about how there's just no such thing as being anonymous on the internet. It's almost impossible to do. And for the everyday user, it is purely impossible. Like even if you're in fucking, everything you do creates this pattern of who you are. And then that's a pretty easy jump to that's an easy jump to like identifying you and like what you're searching for or what sites you're visiting. And I don't really know if people have been educated to how much of the things, like everything you fucking type into Google is saved. It's going somewhere. It's being backed up. It's being processed. It's being filtered. Like there is no such thing as an anonymous search. And I don't think people know that. I don't think people think about that. And so when we, I think for people who do think about it, I think the three of us think about stuff like that. When we are met with a freak out, we're like, well, we've been freaking out about way bigger shit that's in this same category, and you don't seem to care, and you don't have any response to that, and you don't have any solutions. And it may really be as simple as, it's a physical, tangible balloon. It's easy enough to just go shoot it down, problem solved. And we can't solve any of this other shit, by shooting it down. Well, we could, but we won't. I'm not going to advocate
that conversation off mic.
Yeah, I'm.
That's when put the fridge. But no, but it is. Put the phone in the fridge to have those conversations.
Yeah, it's incredibly bizarre, and it's actually really, really disheartening. Because it really does start to feel like I don't think people are going to care, and we're so so far past the point of we're past the point of no return on everything that we've done up to this point being like archived and logged and searched and saved. And I think it's just because we haven't seen a real world repercussion. We haven't seen like a prominent politician's like porn searches leaked, but I think that's going to happen. I think that might be the only way that we do start to give a shit about privacy, like the people who do give a shit about privacy.
You could boil the conversation around banning TikTok purely down to xenophobia. It's only because China is part of the conversation. Because Edward Snowden tried to sound the alarm around all of the other social media companies collecting, storing, analyzing, and using your data for targeting purposes, and they called him un-American. They called him a traitor, and he's essentially living in exile now. And because of where he's located, because Russia doesn't have an extradition agreement with the United States, they call him... They say he's committed treason, and they attack him for that. But what he talked about and what he exposed is now what people are considering a threat, because China is part of the conversation with TikTok. It's not really dissimilar. It's not really dissimilar what they're doing to what Facebook does or to what Google does or to what all these other companies they talked about now a decade ago almost, and what they have been doing and how they've been using it. So if that's really your concern, you would be mad at every company the exact same way. But no, it's just this. This is the only company that people in Washington and decision makers are talking about banning. It's purely racist and xenophobic. So I don't think people really care ultimately. It's just they hate China. They've been conditioned to hate China for this new Cold War.
I think it's worth pointing out, because this occurred to me the other day when I was talking about this in another interview, but because this is an interview, it occurred to me that it's also the fact that boomers in Congress and the elderly in Congress don't use TikTok. They only know about it as like a kid dancing app. And so they do use Facebook. They don't use like Instagram. They don't use whatever, but the age gap and the ease with which like lawmakers are jumping to say, well, not only is this app bad, but it's not only is this bad for the social fabric of like our society, but you're also being spied on by the Chinese, which is explicitly racist. That's exactly the point. Is I will say at the very least equally concerned that China has my information and the US has my information and Facebook has my information and Instagram does. I don't know what any of them are going to do with it, but I know that all of them have it. I also there's an element here where I'm pretty confident that China already has my information, as does Great Britain, as does France, as does Canada. Yes, Snowden sort of pulled unveiled that and said that no, they all are watching and sharing and what is it called, the Five Eyes, or is that not relevant to that?
That's Five Eyes.
It's kind of every major nation has like that wants your data, most likely has it. So yeah, totally. This feels like a very visible version of people who kind of probably do care about their personal information, but don't actually care enough to, care if the US or these like popular tech companies are doing it. But yeah, you can point at China, you can point at this app for kids that you don't care about, and say, well, that's bad, we should ban that. That's demonizing, when, it's exactly the same thing that's happening on every other app, everything you do online.
There have been multiple stories over the past couple weeks about the current security threats to your information at Twitter, including staff who aren't on some sort of coding or security team having access to everything through what they called God mode. And nobody seems to care about that, especially on the right. They're still just sucking Elon's dick, praising him, still, buying into this cult of personality around him.
Well, it depends on who. Many of them are still complaining that they're being shadow banned even more than before now. It's not even enough for a lot of these guys.
Dude. That is a real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, shout out to Cat Turd too.
Yeah. In the next version of Twitter, in order to log in, you're going to have to look at least 5 Cat Turd 2 tweets, and it's going to track your eyeballs to make sure that you looked and you saw all his content. Otherwise, the shadow ban continues. Thank you for listening to this sample of the Insurgents podcast. To hear the rest of this episode and for more bonus content, please subscribe at theinsurgents.substack.com.